Welcome to Module 7, where we're going to look at expanding your learning opportunities. So in your lessons for 621A, you had one lesson. For this section of 621B, you're going to be creating approximately 5 lesson sets or lesson plans with your instructional activities. And each one of them is going to be integrated with your content areas, so that you're aiming for your goals and your standards. What Wiggins and McTighe developed was a format or framework for looking at the quality of how you're creating your learning activities or your opportunities to learn in your lesson plans. And it's called Where To. You can see here, Where To, and it's an acronym for self-evaluating your work. So as you're planning your learning opportunities and for each of your lesson sets or lessons, this is the stage where specific learning activities are planned to accompany each lesson for the unit. So you've already had experience with this. This stage should be based on the desired results from stage 1 and 2. So your essential questions, enduring understandings, your objectives, your goals, and your assessments. Did I say assessments? Where to is an acronym for planning steps to help meet the requirements of the unit. So you're using this to analyze your work. And this is what you're looking for. You're looking for W, where are you going? Why are you doing it and what is expected? How will we hook the students? So looking at your hook for each lesson plan. E, how will we equip students for expected performances assessment? R, how will we rethink or revise? This has a lot to do with formative assessment and a lot to do with how students consider their work and their performance. The second E, E2, how will students self-evaluate and reflect on their learning? So as you know, the importance of reflection, if you imagine not having that opportunity, would that make your learning less substantial, less connected? And the answer would most likely be yes. T, how will we tailor learning to varied needs, interests, and learning styles? So you've talked about tailoring a little bit in 621A, and we're going to look at it again now. And O, how are you going to organize the sequence of your learning? That's the scaffolding piece. So what I'm going to do is just walk through these elements and talk about what this is going to look like in your lesson plan. So where are we going? Why? What is expected? You're going to present the performance task or performance early in the unit. So now you're looking at performance tasks, culminating performance tasks, and any way you're going to evaluate them. So you're going to introduce rubrics, exemplars, you're going to introduce models to the students from the get-go. Post and discuss essential questions, invite students to generate their own questions. You can do this depending on the topic you're covering. Ask students to identify personal goals. What's your goal when doing this? Give diagnostic skills tests or pre-tests. Use KWL, I want to know what I've learned, as a pre-assessment, and check for misconceptions all the way through. This is a whole formative piece. So this is kind of the big picture of your unit. For H, how are you going to hook and hold the student's interest? You got to have a hook. You can use odd facts or examples, a provocative entry or hook questions, mystery or challenge, a problem that can't be solved, a role play simulation, technology to form connections. Well, just a video clip will do if it's kind of an odd, thought-provoking video clip that will get them thinking about your topic. Any kind of thing to kind of pull them in and engage their interest and say, this is where we're going and let's talk about this. For E1, how are you going to equip students for expected performance? You're going to let them know how you're going to evaluate them. That's the bottom line. You're going to assess their understanding and experience with research-based instructional best practices. For example, using vocabulary, Marzano vocabulary as a vocabulary assessment, using foldables as formative assessments, using your rubrics. We've talked about differentiation. How are the different ways? What are the different ways you're going to let people give you evidence of learning? What are the modalities there? What literacy strategies do students need to become successful? Because a lot of reading and writing is involved. And the cartoon just shows this guy trying to escape from jail. There's a lot of ways out. So far, he hasn't found it yet. But you're providing a lot of different ways, avenues for assessment to get back to your goal, which unfortunately in this picture is the prison. So for rethinking and revising, it's not just for the students, it's for both you and the students. Reflection and revision are key elements. If you understand that the students aren't getting it, what are you going to do to go back, reteach, figure it out? What do students need to do to re-envision their work if they need to revise? So both teacher and students need to develop flexibility and critical thinking. And believe me, in a fixed mindset world like ours, it's a hard thing to do to get students to think in alternative directions. So rethinking in relation to the big ideas or important concepts, like what are you trying to get to? What's this all about? Revising or refining the skills, products, and performances, and then reflecting on those. So this is kind of a scaffolded piece. What do you think about it? How has this helped your learning? What do you now remember? What do you know about this? What kind of connections do you make? And as John Dewey said, we do not learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. And so your lesson should also include a way that students can self-evaluate. There are many ways to build opportunities for ongoing evaluation, particularly self-evaluation. And they're a conversation between you and the student. Tickets out the door, metacognitive prompts, writing prompts and quick writes, student self-assessment using rubrics or checklists, student-teacher conferences, of course. You can see the three color stoplight. There's a lot of different varieties of this kind of thing in classrooms. Just a checking for understanding. I don't get it. I kind of understand, but I need a little help. I got this, right? You have some people have cards, a lot of different ways to look at it. So in your lesson, in consideration of the reflection and of self-evaluation, R and E2, a planned event element of revision may need to become part of stage 2 in your planning template. Stage 2 is your assessments. So how are you going to actually provide a formative piece in your assessments where students can go back and revise if needed? That can go under other evidence. Now, tailoring, we've talked quite a bit about it. We have a whole section. The next module will be specifically on differentiation. How will we tailor learning to varied needs, interests, and learning styles? So you're going to be looking at how are you creating those opportunities for most students to learn. Multiple modalities, multiple intelligences, understanding or universal design for learning. So many different ways to look at it, but the goal is the same for all of them, is that students can differentiate both processes, how learning happens, that's you, and products, visual, written, oral, etc., and content, what are the resources and the materials that students can use based upon pre-assessment data if you have the resources to do so. So this may remind you of another graphic, but it's equal. Fair is not equal. This is equality is when everybody has a support they need to do what they need to do. Some need more support than others. So for organizing your sequence of learning, this is the gradual release of responsibility. We call it scaffolding. We call it stair-stepping to, to the goal. So basically what you're doing is and this is scaffolding like student independence, but you also are scaffolding content, you're scaffolding material. So you're taking them, what do they need to know first? What do I need to build on then to get them to know the second thing, to build on to know the third thing, to build on to know the fourth thing, until we finally get back to the goal and the objective at the end of the unit. So in this case, this is an example of independence, in literacy independence, where they've modeled reading first. So you're modeling, then you're sharing. So this is also looks like differentiation. So scaffolding and differentiation are very closely related. Shared reading, writing, guided reading, writing, independent reading, writing, and then the assessment. So basically what you're doing is you're leading them through the steps. How do you learn to ski? You first learn how to put on your skis. And actually the first thing you learn when you ski is how to fall. So then you fall and so you get the feel for the skis, and then you learn certain steps to get down the hill and use certain motions, and then you refine those motions. And so every step gets more specific and more sophisticated in terms of student understanding because you've built this foundation, this background for them. I hope that was a good metaphor. Oops. So a good learning opportunity is meaningful and relevant. It helps students meet the objective. It scaffolds students' learning and skills toward the assessment. It is flexible and aligns with the type of knowledge and skills in the objective. So always remember that for each lesson, you've got objectives you're meeting, and that's what you're addressing. And the objectives are scaffolded over the course of the unit, over time. So let's look quickly at strategies. These are the methods you use to allow learners to access the information you're teaching. In your lesson plan, you want to include strategies of how you're doing those things. So when I ask you, how are you going to do this? That's a strategy. When I ask you how you're going to do it, what is the strategy that you're going to use? For example, you might activate and connect knowledge by using a KWL chart. Students might inquire. The inquiry would involve having a discussion, a round robin discussion in teams regarding the essential questions, or as a group discussion. They might display what they know pictorially in a three-part foldable, or on a piece of paper with crayons. I mean, you need it. We're looking for specificity. They might prioritize. They might summarize. These things are your strategies, the methods you're going to use. So you don't have to spend like hours writing it out, but you do need to write it out so that somebody can pick up your lesson plan unit and take it to your classroom and teach their students what you've got down there. Those strategies are very important. So you have a goal. The students to be able to describe and explain, this is an example, why people thought that the United States had a special mission to spread democracy and civilization across North American continent, and how they tried to do it during the era of westward expansion. That is a really big goal. So the strategies, if you notice in parentheses, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and reading, writing, listening, speaking. To the extent you can include reading, writing, listening, speaking in all your activities or all your lessons, the better. And actually, the more effective and efficient they will be. So students make connections with read, write, talk strategy using leveled readers on a topic about Western expansion. That gives me the strategies you're using and the context they're using it in. Students represent pattern of Western expansion as an analytic diagram. Students use quick fact trading cards they designed from the readings to share and compare facts about Western expansion. All these are strategies. Students describe the cultural impact of westward expansion from the Native American and the pioneers, the Native American tribes and pioneers encountered by pooling information from primary sources. They write a first-person perspective as a traveler on a wagon train to summarize and present what it was like to be a pioneer. So, what isn't a strategy, well-written strategy, is something like students will write in their journal about a traveler on a wagon train. There's no context there. So again, just like the assessments, we need the context. It's important to include that in strategies. And if you remember, your assessments are the scaffold for your instruction. So all your instruction should reflect what the assessments. So coming up will be, how are they going to use the material here to create a performance task, or to show, to write an essay, or to create a skit and a role play. All of this will feed into your culminating performance task. It will feed into your performance task. It will feed into your assessments. So the next steps for you in this module are to complete, elaborate, and expand your unit to include 4 to 5 multidisciplinary lesson plans that address the theme of your unit. Time frame total about 3 to 4 weeks worth of instruction. Scaffold the instructional strategies in your lessons to lead back to the goals. And if you think about the instructional strategies, you're also scaffolding the assessments, even though it doesn't say that here because we're working on instructional activities, the instructional activities, but you will always have the assessments embedded. They lead to the assessments. All the instructional strategies you have are going to lead directly to your assessments, which are related directly to your objectives. Think about how you'll be embedding strategies that support diverse learners in your lesson plans, and you're going to see more about that in Module 8. So with that, I believe that's the end. Oh, 2 of 2. Submit the draft lesson plans of your unit to the assignment Dropbox. Also submit your unit to the discussion forum. We are going to have a peer review activity next week, which we did the same in 621A, and students found it very, very useful to just sit and talk out your unit with your colleagues. For the next meeting, please copy out the peer review rubric and have it ready for class that meeting. And that meeting is required. All of you need to be at that session. I do believe this is my last slide. So have a good week working, and I look forward to seeing you next week in the discussion forum or in the discussion class online discussion.